Hi, welcome. It's so great that you've dialed in to be with us. You're still here. I think it's week 11.
It's week 11. I can't believe it. It's
How did that happen?
the year is flying by. I don't know why. What's going on in the world?
Well, we're still locked in.
Yeah, we
lockdown.
are.
Yes.
But
So,
now the sun is shining. When we started, it was all dark at this time of night.
jumpers.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was,
yeah. Grey hairs. Grown a few. Long hair.
Wrapped around our feet. All that.
So very, very warm welcome to all of you, whether you're a returner or whether you're new. You have dialed into Act 3 Life, which is run by me, Judy Reith, and I'm a life coach. So that basically means I've spent 20 years helping people to sort of sort out their mess and make some good plans and goals and create lives that work better for them. So I love doing that. And we're talking about Act 3, which, if you're not aware of that, it really means the years between 50 and 75, 80, something like that. It's an amazing time of life.
Yeah, we're calling it Act 3 because I think life used to be a 3-act play, and now, because we're all living much longer in better health, it's become a 4-act play. So there's an extra act which has been inserted, I think, somewhere around 50 something, where we've still got good vitality and energy to do stuff. And so this is all about what we might do in that time of our lives. And so tonight we're going to be exploring issues to do with the world that we've written about in our book, which we'll show you in a minute. Oh, here it is. That's the book.
One we made earlier.
One we made earlier. And you don't have to have read the book to be part of this, and we're delighted to have you along. Some have the book, some don't. And the world is a massive topic. When we've done workshops about Act 3, the world topic in about 2 or 3 years ago wasn't getting a lot of interest from the people in the room, but actually for some reason world events and affairs have become more interesting to people. So they've kind of got much more into 3 dimensions. So there's a whole load of different things that might come under the heading of world, but it could be global stuff, it could be stuff just up your street. But we're going to be touching on a lot of those things this evening.
Now, those of us that were here last week, well, we were here last week, and many of you, so it's lovely that you're still coming back when we know the choices are widening out now about what you can do with your time and who can come and sit in your garden if you have one. But last week we talked about friends, and some of you have been in touch about that. And the topic of friends in transition in Act 3. So who are the old mates you've had forever? Who are the new ones? And how are you managing friends in lockdown? Who might you bubble up with if you're in that situation as well? And does that create tensions? I talked to this lady this week, and she said she wanted to bubble up with one of her children, but the other one was the better one to bubble up with because of practicalities. But it was causing all kinds of family difficulties about this bubble.
Which ones are our bubbly children and which are less bubbly? Let's not get into that.
We have very bubbly children. So shops are opening, but what about your confidence? Has anyone been out shopping yet? Type it in the chat, which you can see at the bottom. You know, let's know what you've been up to that has changed for you this week. And
as I said earlier, the book we've written is about the whole of your life in this time of our lives. As I said, Tilly, if we could see the slide of the tree, the metaphor for the book is this tree here. And throughout all these Zooms, we've been concentrating on different aspects of the tree. We started with attitude, a root, and purpose and values and key relationships. And we think that underpins everything we do in our lives: attitude, purpose, values, and key relationships. Until if we can go back to the previous slide of the whole tree, thanks. Then our health is the trunk of the tree, which sustains the things that we get up to in our lives, which is, you know, potentially home, work, money, play, friends, that kind of thing. And tonight, as I said, we're talking about the world. But it's all joined up, and that's the thing which I want us to remember tonight, that it's all joined up. Particularly important to remember that everything we do in the world relates to our attitudes, our purpose, our values, and our key relationships. Thanks, Tilly, for that.
Okay, so we can still see people are logging on, so welcome. I hope you're on the right Zoom that you wanted to be on tonight.
Not that Zoom about timeshare that
Yeah.
you were interested in, or maybe double glazing.
Yeah, or cruises for 2023.
Cruises,
or,
I remember those.
yeah, do you remember those big ships we saw in Sydney Harbour?
Oh my goodness.
It was obliterating the view of the beautiful Opera House. So,
covered in COVID.
So thinking of the world tonight, an Aussie here, born 60 years ago in Perth, Western Australia. But it's funny what you think of as your homeland. And I know that I left there when I was 4 years old, but every time I've been back, you know, flown across the world, 12,000 miles, it still feels like a big pull of some sort. So the world is huge, but it's so small as well.
The important thing tonight that I wanted to mention, which is we're going to be talking to a very good friend who is an expert in her own way in the world. Her name is Vera Schuster Beesley, and she's a friend, lives up the road, in fact, from us, but also has terrific experience around the world, has traveled a lot, speaks many languages, and so she's our special guest for tonight.
Yes, and she's an Act 3 stalwart. She's been on the Zooms all the time, and she's challenged us about the material in the book. She's always got comments as well. So she's absolutely going to be part of this in a massive way, and we're so pleased she's agreed to be our guest as well. So there will be time for all of us to discuss aspects of world issues, and obviously we're going to define that for you in our way tonight, but not in small groups. So we want to ask you, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat function, and we've had a bit of mixed reaction about dumping you all into little groups for small chats amongst 4 or 5 screens. So if there's a poll coming, I think, about whether or not you want to carry on with small groups or whether they're difficult for you. It's completely anonymous. I think if we can just run that poll.
No, it's not a poll. I think we're going to stick it in the chat.
Isn't it a poll? Yeah, it's a poll, isn't it? Yes or no to small groups?
I think, no, it's not.
Yeah, it's the second poll, is it? Should we keep going?
Oh, yes, it is. There it is.
Here we go. Act 3 tech glitch.
Goodness gracious.
Okay, so all you have to do is click yes or no. Are you up for here we go, and then we can see.
The race is on. Yes, no, no, yes.
There's a lot of yeses.
No, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes.
It's like watching the Grand National.
It is. It's just like being on the pier at Southwell, where those little horses run towards the final furlong.
Here we go.
Coming up down the far side now. There's only a short hit. There's going to be loose buttons bound to come off.
I think that's it. So everybody voted. Right. Can you put your thumbs up if you voted?
We've ended the poll, I think. Let's end the poll.
Okay.
Whoa!
What?
It's a fix.
That's 50-50.
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
Oh, well.
So maybe that means we do it every other week. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, that's really helpful.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can see we're really good with the technology, can't you?
All right.
Thank you, Tilly.
Right. Thank you. That's really, really fascinating. Anyway, what are we going to cover tonight? We've only got an hour.
Well, as I said, we're talking about aspects of the world, and we're going to record this session, which we do always. We record these sessions, so we're going to be in charge of who speaks tonight. And if you want to type in your questions and comments as we go, that would be really, really good.
Someone said the poll finished before they could submit, so just type it in the chat what you would like to do, yes or no, to continuing with small groups.
Given we're talking about the world, did you eat any world food today? Maybe some Italian pasta, Asian curry, American burgers, French wine?
We've got French cheese later.
German sausage? Just put it in the chat.
Yeah, what did you have from around the world?
How international was your cuisine today?
Let's see what you've been eating. Okay, and just to remind you that you can put your screen, please, which is up at the top right, put it on speaker view. That will mean that you get the most out of this tonight. Okay.
We're going to light a candle.
All right. Yes. Yeah, so for those of you that are new, what we do every time is just to be very mindful of those who are not having a good time right now, whether they're people we know or world concerns that we have, whether it's local, national, or international. And tonight we will be thinking in terms of those small, medium, and large aspects to issues in our world. So we miss our loved ones.
It brings the world into the room, doesn't it?
That's true.
It's something that we do as a family very often at meal times, just to bring what's out there into the room in order to help keep us in touch, I suppose, really, with the world. And on moving on from that in the same vein, sometimes the things we're going to talk about tonight may touch a spot for you that might be sensitive. You may not know what to do with the feelings that are brought up by that. I would say, don't worry, just say hello to those feelings, and don't biff out thoughts and feelings, from your head without just saying hello to them and acknowledging that they exist. But we'd like you to take out of tonight something positive that you can do, some act that you can do at the end of it all. And if the stuff that you feel overwhelmed by, then try and let that pass like a cloud over your head, like these rain clouds have been recently, and let it move on. Because we don't want you to be overwhelmed, we want you to be encouraged, but also to find a new way, all of us to find new ways to act in the world.
So I'm just looking at, I know that's very serious and meaningful, it's really good, but I'm interested in the fajitas that Dan's had and the Italian food with New Zealand wine.
What's kielbasa? That's Linda Jones.
Yeah, can we have a clue there?
I don't know where that's from, but it's something foreign.
Micro curry, does that mean a really tiny curry?
A very small curry, yes.
Chicken casserole.
Chicken casserole.
Indian, homemade, very good. Polish sausage, pretty interesting.
Very good.
All right, so thank you for doing that. Okay, so as we always do, Adrian and I will just give you a bit more input now about why this whole topic of world issues made it into our Act 3, The Art of Growing Older book. So we've got a little slide. There's a quote here coming up. Tilly, if we could have the next slide, please. So in case you can't see it, I'll just read it for you. It says, "What is the use of living if it be not to strive for noble causes and make this muddled world a better place for those who will live after we have gone?" Now,
I wonder who said that.
Who said that? Does anyone know? Does anyone know who might have said that? Well, it's a tricky one, because I would say maybe even until fairly recently, the person who said this was sort of regarded as a national hero. But today, a comment like that could be quite controversial, as according to who said it. Now, I'll tell you, just to stop faffing about, but it was Winston Churchill. And as many of you will know, with the Black Lives Matter issues that we've had in the last 2 weeks, Churchill has also emerged as somebody who has had a racial problem in his history, but he's also had a lot of good things that he did. So it's left us all, many of us, in a kind of, oh gosh, really? I didn't know that. So, but that aside, we really like the way he's described this idea of what is the use of living if it not be to strive for noble causes and to make this muddled world. And sometimes, yet the world does feel really muddled.
Well, it is written by a muddled person as well. And we're all muddled, aren't we, actually, when it comes to these very, very tricky issues. Now, for example, Black Lives Matter stuff and racism. I don't know any of us, particularly the white people that I know, I'm one of them, obviously. None of us is innocent in this. It's a tricky area, but I don't think that's a reason not to talk about it. So that's why we're doing it tonight.
So I think it's important to set the context. We were really baffled about where to start and where to pitch this tonight. And our lovely guest, Vera, later, was a very straightforward choice for us. But there's so many things that we could talk about. And so many things that we're pretty sure are on your minds, particularly while we've all been in lockdown, about how the world is ticking, what kind of a mess are we who still have power and responsibility and all of those kind of things going to leave for future generations to sort out, whether you have children or you don't have children. Sometimes it still really can keep you awake at night, many of these things, and we'll get more specific soon.
Before you move on, I just wanted to mention Nicola's blog. In the newsletter that we sent round, Nicola Williams, who often is on this call, can't be with us tonight, but she wanted us to, or was very happy for us to share her blog post, which was about the dilemmas and the experiences she's received as a Black woman, a professional woman, and very senior, successful one in the work context. And so if you haven't read it from the newsletter that I sent around earlier on this week, it's in there twice, actually, the Monday one and the today one. Go back and have a look. It's worth reading the whole thing.
It's very quick.
And and her challenge is, you know, it's not just enough to be against racism. It's important to be anti-racist. So that's something we can come back to in a minute later on.
So also, we're wondering how you're getting your news. You know, we've heard of lots of people in lockdown who said, actually, I've given up watching the news. You know, to start with, I watched the 5 o'clock, whatever it is, briefing, and I was addicted to it. And then after a while, I was depressed by it. That's me personally. And I've had a whole range of opinions of people about what kind of news they're listening to and where their sources are, and whether that drains us or whether it actually informs us. You know, what are our news sources? Both within this current situation, but also outside of that. You know, do you pay attention to world events, and where are you finding out things, and what are you sharing as well? Given that we can all just be, what's that word? It's a click thing, isn't it? Click happy or something like that with our social media platforms.
Some people get all their news from Facebook.
But I think the most important thing tonight, we want to try and be balanced, and also to recognise that in many ways there has never been a better time to live in the whole history of the human race on this planet. So we really don't want you all to go away feeling even more down in the dumps about what is happening out there in the world, and perhaps feeling desperate and unable to do anything. That's not what you're going to go away with. We're promised that we're going to work hard to keep this balanced and to keep it practical.
I think we're going to do another poll in a minute.
We are. Get your poll finger ready. So let's think about the issues that we were thinking about when we wrote the book, but also some perhaps 1 or 2 new ones. So I'll just quickly read them out. So actually, Tilly, do you want to show the poll? And I'm going to ask you to vote for the 2 that really keep you awake at night, that if you could really throw your effort and your energy and your imagination into, you would vote for. So we've got political issues, which is things like the powers that be around the world, Trump, Boris, others making up rules that we're supposed to try and follow. Oh, wow, look, they're all voting like mad. Social justice, unfair societal issues, homelessness, mental health, abuse, migration, refugees, population growth, societal morals, security, conflict here, conflict abroad, technology, advancement, and are we all going to be run by robots, AI, consumerism, too much stuff. I'm only interested in what's got a barcode. What is
jobs,
that about?
recession, finances, poverty, health, pandemic, inequality of healthcare provision.
And then green stuff. You know, we were really being made aware of that just before all of this pandemic kicked off. So Greta Thunberg and others who were really helping us to rethink kids missing schools, to protest about the future of the planet. And
there should be another, I can't see it on the screen.
Maybe it missed out, but if there's one, well, stick it in the chat. If there's something else about this world that really buzzes you and makes you think, I need to put my weight behind this before it's too late and before I haven't got a voice anymore. So let's see what's going on. Whoa, look at this. This is amazing. Okay, we nearly, just use your gut to think about this. You know, there's no wrong answers here. You can always change your mind if you really want to in the chat later, but we're just very keen to know what's going on for you.
So what are your fears, Judy? What are your concerns personally?
Well, I think as a mother of grown-up kids, I'm very worried now for the futures of my daughters and their working lives because of COVID particularly. I think that's been a real hit for me personally. Obviously before that I was worried about the planet. I still am worried about the planet. I'm worried that people won't worry about the planet. Now of this. I
was a kid, when I was raised in Zimbabwe, lived in Africa for 5 years. I've also lived in India for quite a long time. And the Black Lives Matter thing has really kind of resurfaced hugely in our family in the last few weeks. And it's been great to see so many young people, particularly our daughters and their friends, getting very excited about it. And we went on a demo. It was only my second demo. My first demo ever was Brexit, and my second one was that. Yeah, and I think the other thing to say with that really is you know, we personally have been involved with street child issues around the world. So when you actually go out and see children
who, through no fault of their own, are on the streets, which we have done several times through a charity. So let's have a look. That would be a social justice issue for, you know, fighting on behalf of those who have no voice. So that looks like all the rest of you.
That's the winner.
That's the big winner. 78% of you are after social justice.
Followed by climate change, ecology.
Change. Yes, yeah. Technology coming in at 13% alongside security at the end there.
Political is,
yeah. So very interesting.
In the third place.
And actually our lovely guest, Vera, who will speak soon, I bet she pressed that social justice button, don't you?
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
One of the things that bothers me when I cycle is fly tipping. I mean, where people tip a fridge into the hedge beside on a country lane. I know it's an old bloke kind of reaction in a way, but it just really gets me upset.
We can share results. There we go. We can do that. Yeah, it does. It does. Oh, have we? Okay. Should we get rid of the poll? Okay. Now, also, you know, this is not at all just a thing about whether you've got children and you're going to leave the world in a mess for your children, because many of you may not have children, and yet you still have a sort of caring heart for what is it that we're actually responsible for, while we still can do something about small, medium and large issues so that the world is slightly better for the generations following us.
We had Bev and Errol on, if you remember, you were on a Zoom with us a few weeks ago talking about values. And they wanted to join a London protest, but they didn't feel they were able to do so because they both had cancer. And so they decided that wasn't a wise thing to do, not a safe thing to do at this moment in time. And, you know, there is a problem of whether people will listen to us or whether we'll get sidelined. And these are risks that we can take. But in Act 3, we've got more time, I think, to generalize. We have wisdom, experience, and contacts. We've got life miles that we can really, really use to get involved and take action, which is why we think it's important for it to be in our tree. So Tilly, could you see our next slide? I think actually Judy's already touched on it. The
Obama slide. Can I have the book, please? Gosh, who misses him?
I think you do.
I do.
So
absolutely love that man. I'll just say Fleabag at this point.
So the world has never been less violent, healthier, better educated, more tolerant, with more opportunity for people, more connected than it is today. Now this, he said before the pandemic happened, but even so, our ability to deal with such things. I was thinking the other day, what would it have been like if we hadn't had the technology we've got now to deal with this pandemic? Anyway, let's not go on that.
Absolutely.
So, what you
so in the book, we just bunged in a few ideas about what we're grateful for about living right now in 2020. We wrote modern medicine, education, lifelong learning, travel opportunities, financial help in countries where there is a benefit system and a state pension and a free healthcare. That's in the UK. For those of you watching elsewhere, you know, perhaps you have opportunities in the countries where you are as well that weren't there even 50 years ago. The technology, I have a sister who lives in New Zealand. She's lived there 50 years and I can now Zoom her and she's happy to do that. That wasn't possible in previous generations. Currently in the UK, we're in peacetime here. We're not at war, whereas 75 years ago or more was the end of the war, wasn't it? My dates are shocking, but there would have been a time where you would have been called up and I would have been doing things as well. So we're not having to go to war as a country. It's never been a better time to be a woman, even though, my goodness, is there more work to do, but actually it's a more equal society than it's ever been. Had I had our 3 daughters 100 years ago, what a different story.
We say that as people who live in the UK.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Yes, in the UK, that's true. And in terms of ageing, you know, there's a lot of charitable resource for us as we get older as well, with charities that are working really hard to not only support older people like Age Concern, but also to campaign to government, and Esther Ranson, who founded the Silver Line, all kinds of things that are available to us in this country, but in other countries as not necessarily the case. And actually more and more retirement years, Act 3 years, as we much prefer to call them, are seen as a positive time of life. And again, in other generations, absolutely not.
So why don't you put in the chat box what you appreciate about being alive in the world today? What do you appreciate about being alive in the world today?
I certainly appreciate technology while we've had this going on.
Absolutely. Clean water is something. I lived once when I was living in India, I lived for a while in a place where there was no running water. We had to go and collect it in a bucket from a spring every day, several times a day usually. And there was no loos, no flush toilets, no taps.
No.
And it was a revelation, yeah. You know.
See what you're saying on the chat. I think I know as well. I had our first child 30 years ago in March, and I would have died in childbirth if she'd been born 50 years earlier. You know, it's difficult first baby's birth, and so that would have finished both of us off actually. So I'm really grateful for the care of mothers and babies when it comes to childbirth that is available now compared to previous generations for sure. So people are saying, yeah, health system, clean water, education, yeah. There's quite a lot on health, isn't there, coming through?
Being free to discuss things, yes, the political climate,
freedom, yeah. Some ethics seem to be lacking, sadly, and
I think that's previously.
Yeah, worried for grandchildren. People are concerned about that. The NHS, yeah. Good. Okay.
So it's obvious that not taking action won't change anything. And it is, as we said earlier, it's about our values. So speaking up and doing something is about what's wrong with the world. It's basically engaging with what offends you and doing something about it. And giving money is obviously important. But there are many, many things that we can do without having to give money and just getting involved, as we will hear from Vera in a moment.
I think we've got a slide next on all sorts of small, medium and large actions, Tills. There we go. I'm guessing that you do one or more of these things. So many little things, bigger things that can really help make the world a better place. It's a cliche, but my goodness, every now and again, there's a place for a cliche.
I've started composting during lockdown for the first time in my life. Actually quite enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's when I start talking to the compost bin that it becomes a bit of a worry.
Yeah, yes. But I remember even as a child in the 70s, my dad would go around barking at us to put a jumper on when we said we were cold. And he was always following us about switching lights off. And he would say, you're not paying the bills, but my goodness, you just wait. I
think it's time to introduce Vera, don't you?
Oh, yeah, let's get Vera in.
So Vera has been an activist from an early age since she was expelled from school. She's someone we think of as very involved locally and in the world, who gets things done. Vera, can you hear us? Is the microphone working? Let's unmute you. Say something, Vera.
Vera, I think you have to unmute yourself.
There you are. Speak, Vera. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are. Yes.
Got you.
So you've been involved, Vera, most of your life in causes such as 30 years ago, setting up an AIDS helpline, prison visiting, looking after the homeless, being
I can't hear you.
Oh, okay.
You can't hear me.
Okay.
Now it's frozen.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we can hear you, Vera.
What's happened?
Can you hear us?
Oh, hello. There she is. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Can
you hear us?
I can. Yes.
Hey.
It was frozen for a bit, but I can hear you now.
Okay.
Brilliant.
So you've been involved in lots and lots of different things, going on demonstrations, fundraising, prison visiting, signing petitions. Why do you do those things, Vera?
Well, I could also say, why not? It'd be a good place to begin. I think it's just, es liegt im Blut, it's in my blood. I mean, my parents, who were German Jewish refugees and felt very fortunate to escape Nazi Germany, just taught us that every single person, whatever their age, their race, their color, their creed, whatever their job or social background, every person's life was as valuable as ours. And that if they didn't have the same opportunities that we had, and we had a very privileged upbringing, that we should try and do something about it. And we were taught always to share, to listen to other people, to travel as much as we could around the world. And to not do so is actually considered dangerous. I mean, my parents were of the opinion, ignorance is not bliss, it's dangerous. And I think we've tried to encourage our children to do the same thing. You know, our two sons, and one of them now works for the Department of International Development. And I think I've just always been so frustrated when I've seen inequality in life, refugees, women in prison, the unequal education opportunities. When I've seen general poverty and financial deprivation or issues around drugs, I've just thought one way I can ease my pain is to do something about it. And doing something it's not a selfless act, it's immensely rewarding. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
You've just got everything to gain.
What do you reckon you've gained?
Well, a lot. I've learned a lot by traveling. But I've gained a lot of friends, people whom I respect. I've gained a certain sense of worthwhileness, if that's such a word. I can get up in the morning. It's changed my attitude. And I've got a purpose in life, and it's a huge value of mine, going back to your 3 principles or 4 principles, to do something for other people. If one has, as I've been very fortunate to have, a supportive family and a supportive husband who said, do what you want. And actually in Act 3, it's much easier because we have more time, possibly more money. I mean, money isn't essential, but it helps. And I've got loads of energy. So just being there for other people, giving them our time and possibly skills and money, mainly giving them hope, it's just immensely rewarding.
Vera, when you said you traveled, I'm imagining you won't have been traveling on cruises and luxury holidays.
No.
Tell me about your Nicaragua trip.
Well, yes, I went to Nicaragua with Amos Trust, and that was a hugely rewarding trip for me, partly because it reminded me of my childhood in Kenya, partly because I was with a great group of people, a group of friends from Amos. But I saw how these people who have no running water, no fresh water, no access to water, how positive they were and how energetic they were and how much they appreciated just the fact that we'd been to visit them. For them, it gave them hope. I felt that I learned a lot more from them than what I was able, certainly at that point, to give them. Later on, when I came back, I think what I could do was share that enthusiasm with other people. I started a huge fundraising thing, which raised over £16,000.
Oh, well
but
done.
Mainly, what was good about it was being able to share that experience with a lot of my friends around the world.
Yeah.
And broaden other people's awareness.
Was it not
people involved?
Was there any sense of discomfort of going to visit people who were in a very sort of different circumstance to you? Were you felt embarrassed by that?
Or guilty?
No.
Guilty?
No, neither. I mean, I knew that's what I would encounter.
Yeah.
And they certainly didn't want to make you feel guilty or anything. They shared everything. They gave us so much. I mean, fabulous meals, of rice and chicken every day for the whole 10 or 15 days we were there. They were very joyful. They shared colourful things with us, their lives. I didn't feel guilty at all. I just thought, this is great. I really want to do as much as I can when I get back for these people. And I've been involved with them, in fact, ever since.
So what's the smallest thing that you're doing in terms of making the world a better place, do you think?
Well, the smallest thing I'm doing right now, I suppose, is just yesterday. So listen up, you can all help. I started something on Facebook, which was a birthday fundraising thing. So it's my birthday isn't for a whole month, but I just clicked on a link and invited all my friends to support by however much money they want to give or not give, Amos Trust. And that's a really easy thing to do. You just click on a link, say to your friends, I don't want any birthday presents this year, except for you to donate on this page somehow. You click various things, I guess. And I wanted to raise what did I say? I think $1,000 or something like that, because it came up in dollars rather than pounds, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah.
I meant it to be pounds, and I've already got a quarter of that.
Oh, well
and
done.
I only started it yesterday. So hopefully by the time you finish doing all these Zooms, I'll be able to tell you that, well, by the 12th of July, which is my birthday, I can tell you I've made it or not. But then that's a really small thing that you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, basically anything around this it's your time that you're giving. So at the moment, I'd make phone calls quite often to people who, as a responder volunteer, you can phone people, you can go out and say, you know, I'll walk your dog, or I'll help you with your child minding, or I'll write letters for you, or I'll do translations. There's so many things you can do. And even in lockdown, there's masses. I mean, at the moment, I'm working on a charity for the homeless in Cambridge. That takes up quite a lot of time. So there is small, medium and larger things, depending on how much time you've got to give and whether you want it to be local, which I do now because I can't travel as much because I can't get travel insurance so easily. So I would tell anybody in Act 3, go away now, go and do whatever you can abroad. You know, get the experiences, get the travel in if you can. And there are so many great charities like the Street Child World Cup one that you founded. Who wouldn't want to do something when you see street children being treated the way they are, and millions of them having to live on the street? Who wouldn't want to do something when you see queues and queues of people today in Goma, in the DRC, queuing for one tap stand? You know, they have nothing. They queue, they can't do social distancing.
No.
They can't even wash their hands. I mean, they're queuing just to get basically some fresh water. There are thousands of them queuing for one tap stand. Why wouldn't you want to do something?
So how do you decide, Vera, I'm just listening to you say that, and then I'm also thinking that I know that 200 yards down the road, we have a really booming food bank, you know, so that do you just hear need and suffering and you don't care where it is? You just respond?
Well, I'm very fortunate because I think a good place to start off with is chatting with your friends, people whom you respect. If you have a great passion about something, you can Google it and see, is there a charity related to this? So I was always very interested in Africa because I was born and brought up in Africa. But now I do much more local things because I can't travel so much. So I don't have a car. So that's other things that you can do here. Is just simply, you know, decide that you're not going to use the car, don't use so much electricity, whatever. There's all sorts of things you can do for the world. But things that I do are things that are related to charities that I have huge respect for their CEOs. And I know that any money I give or the time I give will be well used and fairly distributed. It does need to be something to do with justice, human justice. And I'm very passionate about Palestine. That's probably to do with my background as well. I'm very interested in how life is taken away from you if you're in prison. So I've worked with women in prison, but also I'm quite a keen letter writer to people who are imprisoned for their political thoughts and because they just don't agree with the regime in place. So you can do that just from your home, just writing letters. And you could go to Citizens Advice Bureau and say, how can I find out about this? Or, I don't know, ask somebody and be proactive.
Do you ever get overwhelmed?
I can sometimes get really unhappy when I see just enormous injustices. So I don't know if that's overwhelmed. I can get very unhappy.
Well, what I mean is overwhelmed so that you can't respond or you're paralyzed by the huge need.
No, because all you can do is do your best. You can't do any more. You've got X amount of time and all you can do is do your best. I think the important thing really is to do something. I care very deeply about other people. Again, I think that's probably partly my upbringing. I I just feel, why wouldn't I do something? I've always been brought up to act, to do things. And I think actually in Act 3, we're very, very lucky because we do have the time. And I think we're fairly fortunate. Well, I am. Anyway, I've got a very supportive family who are keen that I do something. A husband who's incredibly independent and says, if that's what you want to do it. Go ahead and do it. So from that point of view, I think I'm really lucky.
And also the way, you know, sometimes in families as well, we might hear our parents talking about these things, but we don't see it in action. And it's that whole thing of, you know, it's the opposite of do as I say, not as I do. It's all about the doing. And your two children as well. Wasn't there a story about one of them disappearing one day with a duvet and a pillow?
Yes. I mean, I think we can learn from our children too. So one of my children, one day, had just gone out of the house. It was the winter, and he came back, and I said, where have you been? He said, oh, I just took my blanket and my duvet down to the chap at the end of the road. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you know, he hasn't got a blanket and it's cold. And I just said, fine. But interestingly, that same man who sat at the end of St. Barnabas Road Church for years, he gave Daniel, our son, a little rather broken Madonna as a Christmas present for that. He said, oh, this is for your son. And it's become a very precious gift from someone who had nothing. I mean, it might have come out of the rubbish bin. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. The fact was that he got it out of the rubbish bin, if it was, and polished it up and cleaned it and gave it to me to give to Daniel, who now is the person who works for the Department of International Development. So I think you can learn like that. And our other son is just a really good listener. So he's really good on listening to friends and caring for local people. So, you know, these things of giving worldwide don't have to be necessarily international. They can be just as well local. And he's been great sometimes, you know, if he doesn't live in this country anymore, but when he did, he was very helpful with me sort of working with the homeless, which I do in Cambridge. And yeah, I think they do learn by example, but we can also learn from them. But I do think it's really important to try and for us to learn from the young people, like today, what they're doing for Black Lives Matter is huge. I think it goes both ways, works both ways.
Yes. Well, I think as well, I'm just going to ask you another question, but also to encourage all the people listening in, you know, if you've got questions about this or comments, please stick them in the chat, because we're going to throw it open to everybody in a minute. But the other thing with you, Vera, is that you love the arts. I mean, in normal times, you were always running off to see the ballet, the opera, a play, a lecture. There is no stopping you. You know, you seem to be someone with the most bulging diary outside of COVID, as well as saving the world as well. You know, when are you going to stop?
Well, wouldn't you be surprised if I said now?
Yes.
I'm going to stop now. I'm not going to stop because, in fact, I've just had 3 months of fairly enforced stopping, in as much as we haven't been out at all. And I have enjoyed it, and there've been a lot of positive things. But I have also understood that it's not a time in my life to stop. I want to go on being as proactive as I can. And that will be limited by the fact I can't travel so much, and it will be limited by the fact I have a slightly impaired immune system, which means I won't be able to go out and mix enormously with some of my friends who are the homeless people, because I don't want to get this virus. But there's plenty of other things I can still do. You know, I can phone people. You can spend a lot of time reassuring just one individual, which makes them happier. And that will pass itself on to someone else. You can go on demonstrations. You can, you know, will just very local things, sign petitions. I think it's not a time to stop. I mean, there's plenty of time to stop when you're dead.
Yes.
You know, I'm assuming that one might have a bit of a rest then. Who knows? I don't know. But
it might be a whole another chance to have another go.
It might be. It might well be, and then I can look at that time. But there's a lot you can do from home at the moment. But I think basically it's so good to be proactive, and you learn so much from being with other people. You know, I think it's important to educate yourself, and I don't want to stop educating myself and learning and giving. What would I do then anyway? I mean,
I'm sure you'll find
it's part of my life. I can't stop.
Yeah.
And I think it's a marvelous time. I don't have to look after my children. I don't have to look after my husband. I've got plenty of time, and it's not a lonely thing to do. You're always with other people, and I'm very much a people person. So you're raising funds with other people, you're talking with other people, you're going out with other people, you're mixing with people. It's immensely rewarding. It's really life-giving. It's energizing. And if I don't want to die yet, I better keep going.
It keeps you alive.
It does. It does. I'm very lucky. I'm very, very fortunate to have these opportunities.
Liz on the chat says to you, Vera, I love how you're so driven by your values. And so positive and can do. Really great to hear. And you are, it is, I mean, it's very evident, and I'm sure everyone can see on this Zoom that it comes from, you have a big heart, which is a lovely, lovely thing.
Yeah, and Lucinda says for some people volunteering in a charity shop might be good, especially if you have a passion or interest in the charity's work as well.
Yeah, very good one, Lucinda, that's right.
Yeah. So do bring in your comments and questions. Angela's saying it's easy to get overwhelmed by need. It's important to do small things locally. Yes, I remember. Yes, I know Angela was out playing guitar just to the street, which was helping to make her street a better place. So, well, you know, we've all had many more opportunities with our neighbours in lockdown.
It's great. I mean, you can go and help people in their gardens. You can do really small things that make a huge change in people's lives, and it's, I think, very important. You know, and if you can't think of something to do, ask around other people, or just Google whatever you're passionate about or interested in.
Well, something that someone we know does is he says to people, I think you could do this. I mean, you could actually team up with someone and say, let's do something together, because not everyone is a starter. We're all different personality types.
He's an encourager, isn't he?
Yeah. So he says, have you ever thought about doing this, or shall we do this together? And that's the thing. Or you might say to a friend, is there something that we could choose together to do? So that you're not on your own.
I think so. And I mean, there are some people who are really good at technical things, like, say, designing a website. I've got a friend who's about to design a website for a charity. And normally that would cost a huge amount of money, but for him, it will be a pleasure.
Yeah.
And he'll be able to give of his time. When it's not this sort of pandemic period, visiting people in homes is a wonderful thing to do. There's just endless things you can do, small, medium, or large. I mean, it's really a question of time, how much time you've got. You have to do things regularly, I think.
Well, I think it's also a question of attitude, because if you decide that you can't be bothered, then you're not going to do it, are you? I mean, that's I'm, you know, coming back to those 4 roots. Attitude. If you turn your heart against the need that you see out there, for whatever reason, either because it's too overwhelming, or you can't be bothered, or you just don't care, then that's that. If you open your heart up, then it's likely that you could do something, but also the difficulty of, or potential of being overwhelmed or confused or dispirited, or it might go wrong, whatever you're doing. Have you had anything go wrong, Vera?
I hope not. Sometimes I haven't raised as much money as I wanted or would have liked to.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes I feel I've let people down if I'm not a good enough listener. I think listening is really important, which is why I do this phone call business. And I don't think I've had anything really go wrong, because you can always try and make it go right.
And what if people don't agree with you?
Oh, well, I'm not an easy person on that. I suppose
Tell us more.
No, I think I tend to fight for what I believe is just. I mean, I certainly listen to other people, and I'm more than prepared to, you know, weigh things up and down and say, well, what about this, or how about this, and compromise. I mean, compromise is essential, obviously, but you can dream high, you can dream of the stars, and then you just get what you can and be with people as best you can. I think it's really important to try and work with people that you respect, and whose opinions you respect, whose attitudes you respect, and above all, whose values you respect, because then you just want to do something. I want to be a doer. Talking about your book, there's a part in it where you say, write your own, not epitaph, but write your own obituary. And I was thinking about epitaphs, you know, I want mine to be, she did her best, not she thought about doing her best. And I think that's going back to the why question. Why do I do it? It's because I want to. I find it very rewarding.
And it's full of purpose. I think it'd be really good if people in the chat put in what you're doing. You know, what kind of actions are you taking already? And also, what would you like to be doing? I'm
sure there's lots being done by people on this call.
Yeah, we know Angela's been playing guitar on the street, but you know,
people are very generous. They want to give. It's in people's nature, I think. They want to give. They want to be helpful, and I think a lot of people are.
And they want to. I think you're right, and I think people want to join someone who's doing something as well. They're not always the leader. They're not always the pioneer, but there's quite a lot of joiners. Who will say, I'll come alongside you. If you're doing X, I'll be with you.
Well, I'm one of those. I just go along with other people. I'm not always the leader.
No, but you just go and do it. You just get up and do it. I went to interview my mum's bridesmaid this week, who's now 89. And I went to her downstairs loo, and it was all very clean and hands washing and all of that kind of thing. But on the toilet wall was this big certificate saying congratulations, with her name, that she'd been the volunteer who'd done the most hours in the Oxfam bookshop in Hertfordshire, somewhere, Hertford maybe, and they were awarding her a certificate. And when I came out of the loo, I said, that's fantastic, 25 years of working in the Oxfam bookshop like that. And she said, it really breaks her heart that she can't, she's 89. She said, I don't think I'm going to be able to get back in the shop because of what's happened, you know, and social distancing. But my goodness, you know, she's somebody who, we can't all save the world in big ways, but she doggedly, quietly went to that bookshop every week for 25 years.
That's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
So people are saying what they do. Angela says she plays guitar regularly in the street and gives a small amount to charity causes, signs petitions, write to MPs.
Yeah.
Daniel is going to be donating to Vera's birthday fundraiser.
Hey, yes. Everybody can. Everybody.
Liz says she tries to live fairly simply, reducing what I consume, especially now. I've only taken 2 flights since 2012.
Really good.
Janine is making scrubs, masks, etc.
Wow.
And started a craft group to make breast cancer pillows, bonding squares. I don't know what they are. Do you know what they are?
What's a bond? Tell us what a bonding square is.
Catherine mentors for a military charity. That's good. Rosanna listens to poor readers in school because I'm passionate that all can read. That's absolutely great.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Brilliant.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Judy was listening to a little 5-year-old on the Zoom today, just playing games over. Have you ever met?
No, I've met her briefly, but I call her once a week because her mum is shielding.
It's hilarious hearing this phone call in the house with this squeaky 5-year-old and Judy being the surrogate grandmother. It's hilarious.
She's full of imagination, but it's just that sense of.
I don't think she's got a dad.
There's so single mum and shielding, no school, all of those things, and it's like, well, what can I do? It's not going to cost me anything to Zoom half an hour each week where we just have this wonderful giggly time. And we talked all about how strawberries giggle. If strawberries could speak, they wouldn't speak, they'd giggle, they'd just giggle. And this was all her imagination. And actually her mum is just sitting on the sofa, eyes closed. And I thought, if I can give that mum half an hour to rest her eyes and her brain and her energy levels, because I'm pretending to be a giggling strawberry, I'm really up for that. And, you know, so I can't solve all the problems of all the single parents who are desperate and exhausted within half a mile of where I'm living, but I can do one thing for a 5-year-old, and maybe that half an hour is going to help. So that feeling of overwhelm and I can't make a difference, actually it's better to do something than nothing, and that's the big message for tonight, really, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. And you did a great thing when with Adrian we did that fundraiser, which was just exchanging books and clothes, and we raised a lot of money for Nicaragua. And that's just fun. You can do it in your own home.
Yeah, that was a big wardrobe clear out.
Steve is saying he's a volunteer advisor and trustee for Local Debt Advice Centre. And he's doing that remotely now, of course, concerned about what will happen post-lockdown. A lot of people with financial issues post-lockdown. That's going to be a big one, Steve. So thank you for that. Katrina goes to schools and does acting and organises craft fairs. What was this?
Somebody was at a virtual funeral today.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Very sorry to hear that. Yeah.
Well done. Yeah. And so Janine says bonding squares for premature babies and parents. That's a bonding square. One knitted square each, then swapped over so they have something from each other.
Oh,
I see.
Beautiful.
Oh, I see. You swap them around.
Oh, that's really beautiful. That would be to do with the smell as well, I think.
And Steph from New Zealand says, I help with a charity where we make 1,500 meals a day and freeze them for people in times of crises. Most get meals taken by social workers to the intensive care unit for parents of sick children in hospital. When you're under duress, it's important to eat well to look after yourself. Well done, Steph. And there are lots of mutual aid groups, says Liz, now, which are doing great local things. They're all over the country. I've delivered leaflets and delivered food parcels.
Wow, so, what an amazing bunch you are.
We knew that you would have loads and loads of lovely things up your sleeve. You probably haven't told us the half of it because you're such a modest lot. But it's just important. The big questions in our poll were social justice
and climate change. They were the big winners.
So I'm hoping that you'll be taking something out of tonight positively. First of all, that bonds well with your attitude and your values, that gives you a sense of purpose that you might either initiate or join in with someone else doing to make it even more fab than you're already doing.
And just ask Vera to do it with you. You'll be fine.
Yeah, if she's got time. So we're drawing towards the end of our Zoom, and so what do you want to take out of tonight?
Yes, stick it in the chat.
Could you stick it in the chat?
What are you actually going to do? You've heard a lot from us, a lot from Vera, a lot of wonderful inspiration from all of you, as well as to things you're doing and want to do to leave our world better than we found it. Just want to say that I was very moved that Dame Vera Lynn died today at 103. I'm sure you're going to live longer than that, Vera. One Vera to another Vera. You're a dame in my eyes, but I know that whatever you think about the war, and war situations, she brought a huge amount of comfort and joy to people she sang for all of her life. And there was a massive outpouring of lovely memories for her today. So don't we love Veras?
We do. Thanks, Vera.
Yes.
And next week we're going to be talking about another chewy subject, shall we put it that way, which is going to be money in Act 3.
It's all about the money.
So when we do, we're able to do live things like Guardian masterclasses, workshops for people that we don't know who just come in off the street to talk about this kind of thing. One of the two big things that people come in thinking about in their Act 3 is money and health. And we've covered health once already, but we haven't covered money. Now, again, it's our view, and I know you would say this, you'd know we would say this, it's important to look at the 4 roots again in relation to your money, in the same way that it's important to look to those 4 roots in relation to the world and your reaction to it. So a lot of people get overwhelmed by money stuff or shy away from it, put their heads in the sand. So please bring your money thoughts, and if you want to email us or send us anything in between times, we're delighted to hear from you.
Let's hear about the money. We won't be flogging you any products or
Absolutely
anything
not.
like
No,
that.
no.
We're not having any professional
We're not
financial
giving,
advisors.
no way.
None of that.
You won't want to listen to us about what to do with your money, but it's about the kind of principles about how you might think about money.
Yeah.
So that's great.
So we hope that you'll be back next week. Please send us your stories in the meantime of what you're doing in the world, and also, as Adrian was saying, your thoughts about money. And also, if we may be so bold and cheeky as to say, if you want to buy the book, it's online, of course. And oh yeah, it looks like this. Or if you've read it and you like it, reviews on that Amazon all help other people to find it. So there's the book.
Thank you for the reviews.
But most importantly, can we all clap Vera? There's
Very
all those
much,
clapping
Vera.
hands.
Thanks very much.
So nice to have your thoughts tonight. Thank you so much.
Good night.
Meet again.
Don't know
Don't know where. Don't know when. But I know we'll meet again some sunny day.